Jake Martinez walked through the tall trees in the Oregon forest. He had been camping alone for 3 days now. The forest was quiet, except for the sound of birds and wind through the branches. Jake loved these solo trips away from the city noise and busy life. He carried his heavy backpack and walked slowly on the forest trail. The morning sun came through the green leaves above him. Jake stopped to drink some water from his bottle. He looked at his map to see where he was going next. The forest was huge and beautiful, with trees that were hundreds of years old. Some of these Douglas fir trees were so big that 10 people holding hands could not reach around them. Jake was thinking about setting up camp for the night when the sky suddenly turned bright green. He looked up and saw something that made his heart beat fast. A silver object was flying through the air above the trees. It was not like any airplane he had ever seen. The thing was shaped like a teardrop, and it was glowing with green light. The flying object was making a loud screaming sound as it flew overhead. Jake could see that it was in trouble. Smoke was coming from the back of it, and pieces were falling off. The object was moving very fast, but it was also falling toward the ground. Jake knew it was going to crash somewhere in the forest. He started running in the direction where the object was heading. The sound got louder and louder. Then there was a terrible crash that shook the whole forest. Birds flew up from the trees, making loud noises. The ground under Jake's feet shook like there was an earthquake. Tree branches and leaves fell down around him. Jake kept running toward the crash site. He could see smoke rising above the trees. Ahead of him, when he got closer, he could smell something burning. It was not like wood burning. It smelled strange and metallic. Jake slowed down and became more careful as he got near the crash site. What he saw made him stop and stare. The silver object had made a long cut through the forest. Trees were broken and pushed aside. The earth was black and burned. Steam was rising from the crashed object. Jake could see that it was some kind of vehicle, but it was not made by humans. The shape was too strange, and the metal looked different from anything he knew. Jake moved closer very slowly. He was scared, but also curious. The crashed vehicle was about the size of a small house. It had smooth curves and no sharp edges. There were no windows that Jake could see. The silver metal looked like it was flowing, even though it was solid. As Jake got closer, he heard sounds coming from inside the crashed vehicle. Something was moving in there. Something was alive. Jake stopped and listened carefully. The sounds were not like any animal he knew. They were more like music or singing, but very quiet and sad. Jake saw a crack in the side of the crashed vehicle. Steam was coming out of the crack. The sounds were coming from inside. Jake knew he should be careful. He did not know what was in there, but if something was alive and hurt, he wanted to help. He moved closer to the crack and looked inside. What he saw made him gasp. There were 3 creatures inside the crashed vehicle. They were not human. They were not like any animal from Earth. They were tall and thin, with long arms and legs. Their skin was pale blue and seemed to glow a little. Their heads were larger than human heads, and their eyes were big and dark. One of the creatures saw Jake looking through the crack. It made soft musical sounds and moved toward him. Jake did not run away, even though he was scared. The creature did not seem dangerous. It seemed hurt and scared too. The creature reached the crack and looked out at Jake. Its big dark eyes looked into Jake's eyes. Jake could see intelligence there. This was not just an animal. This was a thinking being like a human, but from somewhere else. Jake realized he was looking at visitors from another world. The creature made more musical sounds. Then it reached into a pocket or pouch on its body and pulled out a small device. The creature pressed the device against its throat, and suddenly words came out. The words were in English, but they sounded strange. Help needed, the creature said. Through the device. Ship broken. We die here. Jake stared at the creature. It could talk to him. It was asking for help. Jake looked at the other two creatures inside the crashed vehicle. They were huddled together and looked very weak. Steam continued to rise from the broken metal around them. Are you hurt? Jake asked. The creature with the talking device listened to Jake's words. Then it pressed the device again. Not hurt in body, but ship has no power, no heat, no food maker. We cannot live on this world without ship working. Jake looked around at the forest. These creatures were completely helpless. Here, they did not know how to find food or water or shelter. They were used to living inside their advanced vehicle with machines to take care of everything. Now their machines were broken, and they were stranded in a wilderness they did not understand. Rain. Clouds were gathering in the sky above the trees. Jake could feel the air getting colder. A storm was coming, and these creatures would not survive it outside their broken vehicle. They needed help, and Jake was the only human around for many miles. Jake made a decision that would change his life forever. He could not leave thinking beings to die in the forest. It did not matter that they were from another world. They needed help, and he was going to help them. My name is Jake, he said to the creature with the talking device. I will help you. The creature's big eyes seemed to brighten a little. It made soft musical sounds to the other two creatures. They looked at Jake with hope in their dark eyes. Jake looked at the broken vehicle, and then at the forest around them. He had to find a way to keep these three beings alive until help could come. The storm was getting closer, and he had very little time to figure out what to do. The first drops of rain started falling through the trees. Jake looked up at the dark clouds gathering above the forest. This was going to be a big storm, the kind that could last for hours or even days in the Pacific Northwest. The three alien beings inside the crashed ship were already in trouble, and the storm would make everything worse. Jake watched the creatures through the crack in their vehicle. They were pressing themselves against each other, trying to stay warm. Their pale blue skin was getting darker, and they were shaking. Jake realized these beings could not handle cold weather like humans could. They were probably from a much warmer world where they never had to deal with rain and cold temperatures. The creature with the talking device pressed it against its throat again. We are getting too cold. Our bodies cannot make heat like yours. When we get too cold, we cannot move or think, and we die. Jake nodded. He understood now. These aliens were like reptiles on Earth. They needed outside heat to keep their bodies working. Without the heat from their ship's machines, they would freeze to death even in weather that felt mild to a human. More rain started falling. The drops came through the forest leaves and hit Jake's jacket. Soon the rain would turn heavy, and the temperature would drop even more. The aliens' broken ship would not protect them from the storm. Jake could see holes and cracks all over the vehicle where rain would come in. We need to get you somewhere warm and dry, Jake said. Your ship cannot protect you from this storm. The alien with the talking device made musical sounds to the other two. They made sounds back that seemed worried and scared. Jake could tell they were talking about their situation. The alien turned back to Jake. We cannot survive outside the ship. We do not know how to live on worlds like this. Our people always use machines to control temperature and provide food and water. We never learned the old ways. Jake looked around the forest with new eyes. He had to find shelter for three beings who were completely helpless in the wilderness. They could not build a fire or find food or even stay dry in the rain. Everything they knew about survival depended on technology that was now broken. A lean-to shelter made from branches would not be good enough. It would not keep them warm enough or dry enough. Jake thought about caves, but he knew there were no caves in this part of the forest. The rocky cliffs with caves were many miles away. These aliens would never survive a long trip through the forest. Jake looked around for other options. His eyes stopped on a huge Douglas fir tree about 50 yards from the crash site. The tree was massive. It was probably over 800 years old. The trunk was so big that Jake could not see around to the other side from where he stood. Old trees like this sometimes had hollow spaces inside. Jake had learned about this in his survival training in the military. When the heartwood of a tree got old, it sometimes rotted away while the living part of the tree stayed healthy. This created empty spaces inside the trunk that could be used. For shelter, Jake walked over to the giant tree. He put his ear against the rough bark and knocked on it with his knuckles. In some places, the sound was dull and solid, but in other places, he heard a different sound, a hollow echo that meant there was empty space behind the bark. The rain was getting heavier now. Jake could hear it starting to pound on the forest leaves above. Thunder rolled across the sky in the distance. The storm was getting closer, and he was running out of time. Jake went back to the crashed ship. The three aliens were huddled together and shaking worse than before. Their skin was turning a gray color that looked very bad. The one with the talking device could barely hold the small machine steady enough to use it. "I found a place where we might be able to make shelter," Jake said, "but I need tools to make it work. Does your ship have anything I can use to cut wood or dig?" The alien with the device made weak musical sounds. It took several tries before it could work the translator. "Emergency kit ... plasma cutting tool ... for repairs ... Jake looked into the crashed ship through the crack. He could see boxes and containers scattered around inside. Some were broken open, and their contents were spilled on the floor. But he could see one metal box that looked intact. "Can you show me where it is?" Jake asked. The alien pointed with one long thin arm toward the metal box. Jake reached through the crack and pulled the box out. It was heavier than it looked. The surface felt warm to his touch, and there were symbols on it that he could not read. The alien showed Jake how to open the box. Inside was a tool that looked like a thick pencil made of silver metal. The alien demonstrated how to hold it and press a button. A beam of bright blue light came out of the end. When the alien touched the beam to a piece of broken metal from the ship, the metal glowed red hot and started to melt. "This will cut through anything," the alien said through the translator. "But be very careful. It is very hot." Jake took the plasma cutting tool and examined it. The design was simple enough that he could figure out how to use it safely. This tool would let him cut through the dead wood inside the hollow tree. He could carve out a shelter that would protect the aliens from the storm. Lightning flashed overhead and thunder crashed through the forest. The storm was almost on top of them now. Rain was falling harder, and Jake could feel the temperature dropping. The aliens were getting weaker by the minute. "I am going to make you a shelter," Jake told them. "It will take some time, but it will keep you warm and dry. Can you survive a little longer?" The alien with the translator looked at the other two. They made soft musical sounds to each other. Jake could tell they were very weak, but they were trying to stay brave. "We will try," the alien said. "We trust you, Jake Martinez. You are our only hope." Jake grabbed his backpack and the plasma cutting tool. He ran through the increasing rain toward the giant tree. He had never built a shelter inside a living tree before, but he was going to learn fast. 3 lives depended on his ability to turn a hollow tree into a safe, warm home before the storm got worse. Jake stood in front of the massive Douglas fir tree with the plasma cutting tool in his hand. Rain was falling steadily now, and he could hear thunder getting closer. He had to work fast to save the 3 aliens who were slowly dying from the eye. Cold in their broken ship, he pressed the button on the plasma cutter, and the bright blue beam appeared. Jake carefully touched it to the bark of the tree. The beam cut through the thick bark like it was paper. Steam rose from where the hot beam touched the wood. Jake could smell the burning bark, but it was not like a normal wood fire. The plasma beam was much hotter than any fire. Jake started cutting a doorway into the tree. He made it wide enough for the tall aliens to fit through, but not so wide that it would weaken the tree too much. As he cut deeper into the trunk, he found what he was hoping for. The inside of the tree was hollow, just like he thought it would. The hollow space inside the tree was bigger than Jake had expected. Hundreds of years of slow decay had eaten away the dead heartwood in the center of the trunk. What was left was a natural room, about 6 feet wide, that went up into the tree. For at least 15 feet. The walls were the living part of the tree that was still healthy and strong. Jake began cutting away the rotten wood that was still hanging from the walls. He worked carefully to make the inside space bigger without hurting the living tree. The plasma cutter made the work much faster than it would have been with normal tools. In just 2 hours, Jake had cleared out enough dead wood to make a room 8 feet across. The 3 aliens watched him work from their broken ship. They were too weak to help, but Jake could see them looking at him through the crack in their vehicle. Even though they were getting sicker from the cold, they seemed amazed by what Jake was doing. Rain was falling harder now, and the wind was picking up. Jake knew the worst of the storm had not hit yet. He had to get the aliens into the tree shelter soon, or they would die from the cold. But first, he had to make the shelter better. Jake used the plasma cutter to make small holes near the top of the hollow space. These holes would let air move through the shelter so the aliens could breathe. He was careful to angle the holes so rain could not come in, but air could still flow. Next, Jake made a fire pit in the bottom of the hollow tree. He cut a circle in the floor and then went outside to find stones from a nearby stream. The stones were wet from the rain, but they would work to line the fire pit. Jake arranged the stones in a circle inside the tree. The fire would warm the aliens, but the stones would protect the living tree from getting burned. The hardest part was making a chimney so the smoke from the fire could get out. Jake used the plasma cutter to carve a narrow channel up through the inside of the tree trunk. The channel connected the fire pit to one of the air holes at the top. Smoke would rise up through this channel and go out through the hole. The living tree would not be hurt because the channel was cut through the dead wood in the center. While Jake worked on the chimney, the rain turned into a heavy downpour. Water was running down the outside of the tree and dripping from the forest. Branches above, Jake could hear the aliens making weak musical sounds from their ship. He knew they were running out of time. Jake went back to check on the aliens. They were much worse than before. Their blue skin had turned almost gray, and they could barely move. The one with the talking device could hardly hold it steady enough to speak. "We are very cold now," the alien whispered through the translator. "We cannot feel our arms and legs. Are you almost finished?" "Almost," Jake said. "I need to make sleeping places for you, and then we can move you to the tree." Jake ran back to the hollow tree. He used the plasma cutter to carve 3 platforms into the walls at different heights. The platforms were like shelves where the aliens could lie down. Jake made them high enough off the ground so the aliens would be away from the cold air that would settle at the bottom of the hollow space. He also carved small niches in the walls for storage. The aliens could put their few remaining possessions in these holes. Jake even made small channels in the walls to catch rainwater that might leak in. The water would run down to the bottom of the tree instead of dripping on the aliens. The shelter was almost ready, but Jake needed to test the fire system before he moved the aliens. He went outside and gathered dry wood and moss from under the forest trees. Even in the rain, he was able to find some dry material under the thick branches of the evergreen trees. Jake built a small fire in the stone-lined pit inside the tree. He lit it with waterproof matches from his camping gear. The fire caught quickly and began to warm the inside of the hollow tree. Smoke rose up through the chimney channel and went out through the hole at the top, just like Jake had planned. The inside of the tree began to feel warm and cozy. The thick living walls held the heat from the fire. Jake could see that his shelter would work. Now he had to get the aliens moved before they died from the cold. Jake ran back to the crashed ship. The aliens were barely conscious now. Their skin was dark gray, and they were not moving much. Jake knew he had very little time left to save them. "The shelter is ready," Jake told them. "I need to carry you there one at a time. Can you hold on just a little longer?" The alien with the translator made very quiet musical sounds. It took all its strength to press the device to its throat. "We ... trust you ... Jake Martinez. Please, help us." Jake reached through the crack in the ship and carefully lifted the first alien. It was much lighter than he expected. The alien's body felt cold against Jake's arms, but he could feel is still alive. Jake carried the alien through the rain to the hollow tree and gently placed it on one of the sleeping platforms. The warmth from the fire immediately began to help the alien. Its skin started to get a little bit of blue color back. Jake quickly went back for the other two aliens. By the time he had moved all three of them into the tree shelter, the storm outside was getting very bad. But inside the hollow tree, it was warm and dry. The aliens were safe. The fire inside the hollow tree burned bright and warm. Jake sat next to the stone fire pit and watched the three aliens slowly come back to life. The warmth from the flames filled the carved space, and the thick living walls of the Douglas fir held the heat like a natural oven. The alien who had the talking device was the first to get better. Its gray skin slowly turned back to the pale blue color that meant it was healthy. The alien sat up on its sleeping platform and looked around the inside of the tree with wonder in its large, dark eyes. "This is amazing," the alien said through its translator. "You have made a home inside a living tree. We have never seen anything like this." Jake smiled and added more wood to the fire. "Trees like this can live for over 1,000 years. This one was hollow inside, so I just made the hollow space bigger. The tree is not hurt, and it will keep growing." The other two aliens were getting better too. They sat up on their platforms and began making soft musical sounds to each other. Jake could tell they were talking about their new home. They seemed surprised that they were warm and safe. Outside the tree, the storm was getting worse. Rain pounded against the forest, and wind howled through the branches. But inside the hollow tree, it was quiet and peaceful. The thick walls kept out the noise and the cold. Jake had been working for almost 20 hours without rest. He was very tired, but he wanted to make sure the aliens would be comfortable. He used his knife to carve better steps, leading up to the sleeping platforms. He also made small shelves where the aliens could put their few belongings from the crashed ship. The youngest alien climbed down from its platform and came close to the fire. Jake had learned that its name was Zil when he heard the others calling to it. Zil watched Jake work with curious eyes. It seemed to want to help, but did not know how. "Can you show us how to do what you do?" Zil asked through its translator. "We want to learn." Jake looked at the three aliens. They had spent their whole lives depending on machines to do everything for them. They had never learned to work with their hands or use simple tools. But they were intelligent, and they wanted to learn. "Sure," Jake said. "I can teach you some basic things." Jake started by showing the aliens how to keep the fire going. He explained that fire needed 3 things to burn: fuel, air, and heat. He showed them how to stack wood so air could flow through it. He taught them how to blow gently on glowing coals to make them burn brighter. Zil was the first to try. The young alien was clumsy at first, and almost put the fire out by putting too much wood on at once. But after Jake showed it again, Zill was able to add wood to the fire the right way. The alien made happy musical sounds when the flames grew bigger. Next day, Jake decided to make their tree home even better. He used his knife to carve channels in the walls that would collect rainwater and direct it into containers. He showed the aliens how to make containers from large pieces of bark. The bark containers could hold water for drinking and cooking. Jake also made a better ventilation system. He carved more holes near the top of the tree and covered them with woven grass to keep rain out while still letting air flow. The aliens watched everything he did and asked many questions. "Your people," said the alien called Vel, who seemed to be the leader. "They all know how to do these things?" Jake shook his head. "Not all humans know these skills. Many people in my world live in cities and depend on machines just like you do. But some of us learn the old ways. We learn how to survive without machines." "Why do you learn these things if you have machines?" asked the third alien, whose name was Keph. Jake thought about how to explain. "Because sometimes machines break down. Sometimes you find yourself in a place where there are no machines. When that happens, you need other skills to survive." Over the next few days, Jake continued to improve their tree shelter and teach the aliens basic survival skills. He showed them how to find edible plants in the forest. He taught them which berries were safe to eat and which ones were poisonous. He showed them how to catch fish from the nearby stream using a spear made from a sharpened stick. The aliens were eager students, but they had much to learn. Their long, thin fingers were not good at handling rough tools. Their large eyes could see well in dim light, but they had trouble judging distances when throwing spears at fish. Still, they kept trying and slowly got better. Zill was the most successful at learning new skills. The young alien practiced making fire every day until it could start a fire quickly, even when the wood was a little damp. Zill also learned to weave grass and pine needles into mats that could be used for bedding or to cover the ventilation holes during heavy rain. One evening, as they sat around the fire, Jake asked the aliens about their home world. Vel used the translator to describe a planet that was much warmer than Earth. Their world had no seasons, and the temperature never changed. Plants grew without rain because water came up from underground springs. Animals were gentle and easy to catch for food. "It sounds like paradise," Jake said. "It was," Vel replied. "But we had forgotten how to live without our machines. When our ship crashed, we nearly died because we did not know the most basic things about survival. You have taught us that there are other ways to live." Keph had been practicing with the fish spear all day. That evening, the alien proudly brought back 2 small fish that it had caught in the stream. Jake showed Keph how to clean the fish and cook them over the fire. When they ate the cooked fish, Keph made happy musical sounds, and the other aliens joined in. "This tastes different from food made by machines," Keph said. "It tastes better." Jake smiled as he watched the 3 aliens sitting around the fire in their tree home. They were learning to be survivors. They were learning to be a little bit human. 3 weeks after the crash, Jake woke up to a strange sound in the forest. It was very early in the morning, and the sun was just starting to come through the trees. The sound was low and musical, like the voices of the aliens, but much louder. It seemed to come from the sky above the forest. Jake climbed down from his sleeping platform in the tree and looked out through the doorway he had carved. The 3 aliens were already awake and making excited musical sounds to each other. Vel pressed the talking device to its throat and spoke to Jake. "Those are our people," Vel said. "Rescue ships are coming." Jake looked up through the forest canopy and saw lights moving between the branches. 3 large silver objects were slowly coming down through the trees. They looked like the crashed ship, but much bigger and they were not damaged. The ships moved without making any noise, except for the low musical humming. The rescue ships landed in a clearing about 100 yards from the hollow tree. Jake could see beings coming out of the ships. They looked like Vel, Kef, and Zeal, but they were wearing some kind of uniforms and carrying devices that might have been weapons or tools. "Stay here," Jake told the 3 aliens. "Let me go talk to them first." Jake walked toward the rescue ships, with his hands visible so the newcomers could see he was not carrying any weapons. The beings from the ships saw him coming, and several of them pointed their devices at him. Jake stopped walking and waited. One of the uniformed beings came forward. It was taller than the 3 aliens Jake had been helping, and it moved with the confidence of someone used to being in charge. The being pressed a talking device to its throat and spoke to Jake. "I am Commander Sek of the rescue fleet. We detected the distress signal from the crashed exploration vessel. Where are the 3 crew members who were aboard?" "They are safe," Jake said. "I have been taking care of them. They were badly hurt by the cold, but they are better now." Commander Sek looked confused. The being operated a handheld device and studied the readings on it. "Our medical scanners show 3 healthy life signs in that direction, but our records indicate the crew should have died within hours of the crash. The environment on this planet is hostile to our people. How did they survive?" Jake pointed toward the hollow tree. "I made shelter for them. They are living in there." Commander Sek and several other uniformed beings followed Jake to the tree. When they saw the doorway Jake had cut into the trunk, their large eyes grew even wider with surprise. Vel, Kef, and Zeal came out of the tree to meet their rescuers. The reunion was emotional. The 3 survivors made loud musical sounds, and the rescue team responded with their own songs. Jake could tell they were all very happy to see each other. But Commander Sek kept looking back at the tree with confusion. "How did you survive in there?" The commander asked Vel. Vel gestured toward Jake. "This human saved our lives. When our ship lost power, we had no heat and no food. We would have died from the cold. But Jake built us a home inside this tree. He taught us how to make fire and find food and stay warm." Commander Sek walked around the tree and examined Jake's work. The being looked at the carved doorway, the ventilation holes, and the chimney system that let smoke out. Other members of the rescue team were taking readings with their devices and talking to each other in musical voices. "This is remarkable," Commander Sek said to Jake. "You created a complete life support system using only primitive tools and natural materials. Our emergency protocols estimate that establishing basic survival shelter in hostile conditions requires at least 6 months with proper equipment." "It only took a few days," Jake said. "Trees like this are hollow inside when they get old. I just made the hollow bigger and added a fireplace." Commander Sek operated its handheld device and showed the readings to other members of the rescue team. They made surprised musical sounds when they saw the data. "The internal temperature is optimal," Commander Sek said. "The air quality is perfect. Humidity levels are ideal. You have created better living conditions than many of our manufactured habitats." Zil came forward and spoke to the commander through its translator. "Jake taught us many things. We learned to make fire and catch fish and find plants to eat. We learned that we do not always need machines to survive." To demonstrate, Zil gathered some dry wood and used the fire-making method Jake had taught. The young alien was able to start a fire using only sticks and dry moss. The rescue team watched in amazement as Zil blew gently on the sparks until they became flames. "Impossible," one of the rescue team members said. "Our people lost these abilities thousands of years ago when we developed advanced technology." Kef showed the rescue team how to weave grass into useful containers. Vel demonstrated the fish spear technique and even managed to catch a small fish from the stream while the rescue team watched. The three survivors had learned skills that their own people had forgotten long ago. Commander Sek studied Jake with new interest. Your species is remarkable. We have encountered hundreds of different civilizations across the galaxy. Most follow the same pattern. As they develop advanced technology, they lose their primitive survival skills. But your people seem to have kept both. Some of us have, Jake said. We think it is important not to forget the old ways. Commander Sek operated several devices and spoke to other members of the rescue team. They talked in their musical language for several minutes. Finally, the commander turned back to Jake. We would like to offer you something, Commander Sek said. Our government has programs for beings who show exceptional abilities. We would like to invite you to visit our world and teach our people these survival skills. Many of our colonies fail because the settlers cannot adapt when their technology breaks down. Jake was surprised by the offer. He had never thought about leaving Earth to travel to other worlds. But he was curious about these people and their civilization. What would I have to do? Jake asked. Teach, Commander Sek said. Show our people how to live without depending completely on machines. Help them remember skills they have forgotten. Vel came over to Jake and made soft musical sounds. Please consider it, Jake. You saved our lives, and you taught us that there are other ways to live. Our people need to learn these lessons. Commander Sek pressed a small device into Jake's hand. This beacon will let you contact us if you decide you want to make the journey. Think about it. Jake looked at the device and then at the three aliens he had saved. They had become his friends over the past 3 weeks. He had enjoyed teaching them and watching them learn. The rescue ships prepared to leave. Vel, Kef, and Zil said goodbye to Jake with musical songs that sounded sad and grateful at the same time. They promised they would never forget what he had taught them. As the ships disappeared into the sky, Jake stood next to the hollow tree that had been their home. He looked at the beacon in his hand and thought about the offer. Maybe the galaxy did need more humans who remembered the old ways of surviving and adapting. The tree would remain as proof that sometimes the best technology is the simplest technology, shaped by human hands that refuse to give up.